So today I'm going to talk about what the real story is behind the beef with Mark Levin, Tucker Carlson, Ben Shapiro, and others. I'm going to unpack it, but there's one big thing that no one is talking about because they think you can't handle the truth. I'll explain it. I'll also explain how this actually involves two amazing men, mentors of mine, Charlie Kirk and Dennis Prager, who would be an up-and-coming, sad as it may be, voice that is ranked possibly 8th among the 18 to 29 age group. That would be Nick Fuentes. So now it all makes sense. Ben Shapiro and Mark Levin are upset with Tucker Carlson because he platformed Nick Fuentes. But not just because Nick is fully crazy. It is because Nick has become a big voice among the young people that he is leading astray, and by astray, I mean away from Israel. There is a vacuum in the Gen Z crowd that is looking for a voice to follow. The crux of this comes down to those that are overtly loyal to Israel feeling very threatened. What I mean is that there are folks that are not just supportive, but they feel a sense of daily duty to fight for Israel. I'll explain the definition of terms that are confusing the situation. It's very important. Suffice it to say that Tucker's timing to platform Nick Fuentes was questionable for sure, and he's a major threat to those that vehemently fight for Israel. But he is not the biggest threat. I'll dig into that more in this video. If you want to skip ahead, then follow the timing shared in the description. Before I dig into the details, let me say a little bit about some of these characters. First, Ben Shapiro comes across as if he supports a caste system in America. He is one of the most condescending people I've ever seen. More on that in a bit. I've learned a lot from Mark Levin, and he's nearly always right, but in this I found a crack. Tucker is not perfect for sure. He openly admits that, but he is asking a lot of questions, and Tucker is America first, meaning he believes in American liberty. Liberty is a wholly misunderstood concept, which I was recently asked about, so I'll link a video to that as well in the description. Stu Peters is unhinged. Says he's a Christian, but wow, some of the things that he says. Some of the things that Alex Jones says also put him in the unhinged category. He gets props now because he was right about some things that were big, but he is still wrong way too much. Breaking with Owen Schroyer was a mistake, but probably good for Owen. Nick Fuentes is off his rocker. Many young men watch him because it comes across more like a stand-up comedian than someone that is serious in any way, shape, or form. Candace Owens, I think, means well, but she's reaching way too much. I mean, seriously reaching. Some people give me a hard time for going Mr. Rogers with everything, but I often find that much of our problem is we simply do not understand what we are talking about enough to really understand the scope of the discussion. I find myself learning all the time. So as usual, I'm going to do a little education. So let's jump in with both feet. Those of you that think you know what the term Zionist means likely don't realize there are at least two definitions, which is why people freak out when Tucker says things like he hates Zionists, they are the worst, which he later apologized for. But the fact remains that there are at least two definitions, and most of us don't know either of them. When you understand both, it makes complete sense as to why Tucker said what he said. The same is true with the anti-Semite term. There are at least two definitions, and I'd argue that most don't know either. I don't say this to be offensive. I feel like I'm constantly looking up definitions of terms these days, many of which I don't really even want to know because they're mainly made up by the left. I'll explain. So let me say this just to be clear from the start. I support Israel because I'm a Christian, and the Bible is clear that the tribes of Israel are the original chosen of which we have been grafted into, just as we are heirs to the throne with our Savior Jesus. My stance on Israel is this. In Genesis 32, Israel began with Jacob, which translates to Israel. The 12 tribes come from Jacob or Israel. They are chosen by God. So are the Gentiles, which is us, by virtue of the gospel of Jesus. The land of Israel is vital in both the New and the Old Testament. Israel is prominent in the early church. Israel is the standard of God's promise to his people that Jesus fulfilled, allowing us to be grafted in. Israel is even mentioned in end times prophecy found in Revelation, which is the last book of the Bible. chapter 7 and chapter 14 and other places, and really throughout the Bible. But I'll discuss more on this later. But the biblical term Israel does not necessarily include everything, every organization, and everyone that currently claims to be associated with Israel. Now that you know where I stand with this and with Israel, let's jump into this term Zionist or Zionism. I am a Zionist if the definition that Zionists believe that Israel should have their own homeland. That is what I call a simple Zionist. Let me explain what I call the complicated Zionist. A Zionist can and does mean to some that they not only believe and support Israel having their homeland, but that they are also living in such a way that they wake up each day with a priority to move the objective of Israel's homeland forward. They are absolutely and blindly working to ensure Israel reclaims all of its land according to the historical priority in their mind of the 12 tribes of Israel. You can see how the different meanings and definitions can create confusion. With this in mind, it makes more sense why, for example, Tucker Carlson once said he hates the Zionists. They are the worst. He later apologized for saying it, but I assume he was speaking of people that believed Israel should have their land and that it must be fought for daily by unhinged prognosticators that create nonstop problems as they offensively fight to ensure Israel gets all of their land. Again, I support Israel, but this is radical. Even while Israel's precious homeland is not really fully defined. Less than 0.1% of the U.S. citizens have dual citizenship with Israel. That is less than 1 out of 1,000 people. The U.S. population is made up of about 2% Jewish people. Congress, however, is made up of roughly 6.5% Jews. That means that there are 8 times the number of Jews in Congress as in the general population. That's an interesting statistic. How did that many Jews get elected? Are Jews simply more engaged politically? That certainly could be the case given the fact that they seem to need U.S. support to remain safe in their homeland. Again, I support Israel. Or another consideration, are there people, PACs, and others pushing, spending, and supporting pro-Jew, pro-Israel candidates? It's a good question to consider. Further, once Jews are elected, is there bias in their support of Israel by them? Another good question that is not hard to research, so I did it for you. Of the roughly 35 Jewish members of the current Congress, all but one have lifetime pro-Israel voting scores of 90 to 100%, according to AIPAC. Bernie Sanders is an outlier, which should not be a surprise. I'm not sure where Bernie fits into all this, but I do know he honeymooned in Moscow. There is no evidence of any Jew or pro-Israel member systematically voting against Israel's interest on security aid, anti-terrorism measure, or anti-BDS legislation. Claims that Jewish members secretly undermine Israel or show dual loyalty in the opposite direction are contradicted by the actual voting records. In short, it's overwhelming that Jewish and avowed pro-Israel members of Congress vote pro-Israel at extremely high rates. I guess that isn't surprising. Typically higher than the average congressional vote. But even with that doesn't mean that there is bias. It is just data. They get elected, many have gotten some help, and they vote pro-Israel. It is just data without knowing each person, their motivation, etc. It is still an unanswered question. In my mind, that's okay. A lot of what we learn in life sort of floats out there as random information until we find a connector for the information. For example, Ilhan Omar was recorded speaking in her native Somalian language recently, expressing her priorities in regards to her home country. This would be a connector that you could use to understand much of her voting record. Without a connector, you are guessing, and even with it, we are not 100% positive of what motivates another person. Dennis Prager, Victor David Hansen, and Larry Arnn are wise examples of people that are skilled at connecting facts in these dots over time. It is a skill to allow information to come in and float around until there's connectors. Even when there are connectors, there's likely not a guarantee of a solid fact, but when you get an overwhelming piece of information or many connectors all telling you the same thing, then you can make some reasonably solid assumptions about the person or the situation. With that, let's define anti-Semitic, since I promised we would do that. It is not anti-Semitic to ask these questions. I'm asking them here because part of my premise around the argument between Ben Shapiro, Mark Levin, and Tucker Carlson mainly, and others, leans into the influence that each of them has, or that Israel has over them. As a result of these questions, I am not in any way anti-Semitic, and anyone that says that I am is conflating what I am asking. So let me be clear. It is not anti-Semitic to question Israel, Israeli leadership, or the IDF, particular people that happen to be Jewish, or to question anything about Israel. This is how we learn. Also note that many Jews recently voted for a socialist mayor in New York City, so we clearly do not agree with these folks on everything. Some countries are generally more friendly than others, but people rarely match the stereotype of their country internationally or their country's leaders. I personally have not met a mean or rude Iranian. I am far from being a fan of the Ayatollah or the president of China, but the vast majority of the people they lead are also not fans. Evil dictators do not create a raving fan base. I bring these examples up because although I support Israel, their leadership is not immune from questioning or focus to determine their motivations. That is also true in our own country. We cannot follow blindly. We live in a country that is blessed to be self-governed by representatives, so it is even more important that we pay attention to what our representatives are doing on our behalf. And just because we love our country doesn't mean that we are supporting or happy with horrible leadership, such as what was demonstrated under Obama and under Joe Obama's administration. To most of us, being anti-Semitic means that we don't think America should support Israel. But to some people, anti-Semitism actually means that the person is actively seeking to destroy or to hurt Jews or Israel, that they would go out of their way to harm Israel, that their entire priority in life is to hurt Jews and Israel, much like a Nazi, which is also why that Nazi title is tossed around so much these days. So finally, with the lesson complete, let's jump into the conflict here, which seems to mainly be between Ben Shapiro and Mark Levin ganging up on Tucker Carlson. Let me start with an overview of each from my perspective. Ben Shapiro is, as mentioned previously, one of the most condescending humans that I've ever seen. He was wrong about COVID. He was wrong about the jab. He was wrong about Trump. He was wrong about January 6th. He was wrong about Christianity. He's still wrong about Christianity. He openly says that he thinks Christ was a liar and that Christians are dumb to follow him as Savior. He was wrong about Tucker, and I'll explain why he is doing that. It's purposeful. He's wrong about America. Mark Levin is outspoken, incredibly smart, opinionated, well-written, lots of helpful books, great at marketing himself, rarely makes mistakes. Even historically, there is little that you can point back to that Mark was wrong on. He's right on almost everything. Clearly, I've been a follower of Mark Levin for a long time, so this is a difficult call for me, but he is wrong about this one. My belief is that he's conflating his love and devotion for Israel with his disdain for Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson admits when he is wrong, which he has been many times. He digs for the truth. He works to find the story. He interviews controversial people. Tucker is not infallible, but he is right on almost everything when he makes a call. He is usually digging for information more so than making calls one way or the other, and he admits when he is wrong. An example is when he did the review of the Tesla Cybertruck. The truck was ugly, and he said so, but it performed remarkably, and like all Teslas, it's a remarkable, well-made automobile. Tucker just dug for the information and lets the viewers make their decisions. Anyone that has written anything or had a public voice for some time has said something that they later realized was incorrect or their position changed. Tucker admits when he has made a mistake. I think that is a sign of a good leader. Tucker's interview with Ted Cruz, as compared to Nick Fuentes, for example, was out of balance. He didn't press Fuentes on many of the completely wacko things that he believes, while he pressed Ted Cruz on his biblical knowledge in a way that made Cruz look like a buffoon. My point is that he could have easily done the same to Nick Fuentes, and he probably should have. His views are that wild. Ted Cruz is no angel, but he's devoted his life to serving the country, is right on most of the issues, and certainly has not established any of the wild positions that Fuentes has. Tucker isn't anti-Semitic, nor is he anti-Zionist. He recently apologized for saying that he hated Christian Zionists, but I believe that the reason why he said that was that he feels like these people are not using their brains as they act. They call themselves a Christian Zionist, which seems to give them license to support Israel without having any mental attitude to think critically about the things that Israel does. It is important to understand that questioning the actions of a thing or of a people or a country does not mean you're against the people or the country. If I was to assume or speak for Tucker Carlson in any way, especially in this regard, I would say that it seems like he just wants people to use their God-given brains. So now you know I have zero respect for Ben Shapiro and his positions. I have a lot of respect for Mark Levin, but I think he's wrong about Tucker. And I respect the work that Tucker puts out. I think he tells stories that are otherwise untold. We would never hear them. And I don't believe he has an open bias other than being pro-American and pro-liberty. I now want to unpack the real reason why I believe Tucker is being attacked by Mark Levin and Ben Shapiro. But let me first run through a list of people that I will categorize for you. These are people that I recommend listening to skeptically, if at all, and I'll explain why. The list is only based on my opinion and experience and nothing more than that. Before I share that list, let me share who I do enjoy listening to. People like Tucker Carlson, Mark Levin, David Webb, Andrew Wilkall, Steven Crowder, Glenn Beck, Dennis Prager, Hugh Hewitt, Laura Ingraham, Michael Savage, Tim Pool, Matt Walsh, The Charlie Kirk Show, God bless Charlie Kirk, Erica Kirk, and all of the TPUSA team worldwide. I enjoy the modern day Megyn Kelly, Michael Knowles, Sean Ryan, Will Cain, and few are funnier than Greg Gutfeld and his crew on The Five. I believe these people are generally right about 99% of the time. This is not about agreeing with them. I am challenged by some of them commonly, and we should never follow anyone without feeling free to question them. There are others on the left that have truly lost their minds, such as James Carville, Owen Jones, Jen Psaki, Rachel Maddow, Morning Joe, Joy Reid, and many others that make me ill to listen to. They are so wrong so consistently that it is obvious that their entire perspective is wrong. They are standing on one mountaintop, sharing their view while telling us they are actually standing on a different mountaintop. They are consistently wrong more than they are right. There is another group of people in between that I find distasteful as well because they conflate pieces of information into an entire narrative that is nonsense. I'd say they are right 90% of the time, but it is the 10% that is truly harmful. Recently, Candace Owens made an entire narrative around the amount of time it normally takes to schedule an event to leap to thinking that the folks at TPUSA were complicit in some way with the demise of the beloved Charlie Kirk. Candace is not the only one that does this. Alex Jones seems to have invented the concept. Stu Peters is in the same boat. Nick Fuentes is borderline crazy based on some of the things he says. Remember when I was talking about those with wisdom and those that use information as connectors for additional information to build a narrative around a person or a situation? What I see people like Candace and Alex and Stu and Nick doing is they take single pieces of information or a few pieces that could point in several directions, and they make assumptions about that information around where the information is pointing, and they end up with interesting stories, but their stories are usually fictional. At times, these people guess correctly. Alex Jones is more known for this, but at what cost? They are wrong too much of the time, and they lead their viewers from one point of worry or stress to another. This gives you some categories of people to listen to and to watch to chop out the junk that is only going to confuse you. The more you know, the easier it seems to be able to determine the truth through the lies and misdirection that surround us daily. So with that, why are Mark Levin and Ben Shapiro attacking Tucker Carlson, and what do Charlie Kirk and Dennis Prager have to do with the situation? When you get into the top 10 in your media reach, you're always looking at your rank on the list. And you're going to always be looking for ways to increase your reach. You become as much or more optimistic as ever. Ben Shapiro was second to Charlie Kirk on the list of 18 to 29-year-old listeners. So this is opportunistic for Mr. Shapiro. And the truth is, that's not a bad thing. But even that is not the primary reason why I believe they are attacking Tucker Carlson. Two names that capture the younger audience in the US en masse were Charlie Kirk and Dennis Prager, with nearly 25 million combined followers. The assassination of Charlie Kirk, who is by far the leader of the Young Democrat, and sends a lot of these people looking for a place to land. Ben Shapiro is already second on the list. Dennis Prager, who is still seventh on the overall list of 18 to 29ers, even though he suffered a fall from an injury causing many of his followers to also be looking for a place to land. Although Marissa Straight does an amazing job on PragerU, she does not cater to or reach the younger folks like Dennis has historically. But even all this is not the reason why the jockeying is going on here. The real reason is wrapped up in two things. American adults support Israel at roughly 60% being positive for U.S.-Israel relations. Contrast that with the 18 to 29 age group, only about 20% indicate a priority for U.S. to have positive relations with Israel. Digging deeper, we see that the number of professing Christians among mature adults in America at close to 80%, while the 18 to 29 age group is only about 45%. The reason this is important is because Christians generally hold a lot of respect for Jews, even though it is not universally reciprocated. Many Jews tolerate Christians like Ben Shapiro. Many of them think Jesus was just a man and that we are foolish to profess our allegiance to Jesus as Savior. But this creates a huge narrative problem for the Jew-first community. They know that their best hope of ensuring support for Israel is to promote a pro-Christian society here in America, and if possible, so much as they can control it, a society without strong anti-Semitic voices. Who would be an up-and-coming, sad as it may be, voice that is ranked possibly 8th among the 18 to 29 age group? That would be Nick Fuentes. So now it all makes sense. Ben Shapiro and Mark Levin are upset with Tucker Carlson because he platformed Nick Fuentes, but not just because Nick is fully crazy. It is because Nick has become a big voice among the young people that he is leading astray, and by astray, I mean away from Israel. Ben Shapiro, Mark Levin, and many are freaking out because they can't have a prominent voice encouraging young people to question Israel. That could spell disaster for a future support for Israel. The beef lit up when Tucker had Nick Fuentes on his show. Mark Levin and Ben Shapiro blew their tops because they hate Fuentes, because he has a following, and because he is strongly anti-Jew, anti-Israel. Giving Nick air is a huge threat to them and their priorities and their cause. Tucker broke some journalistic law by giving Nick air. The timing of that interview is certainly questionable. Did Tucker not read the tea leaves on the 18 to 29 ranking when he platformed Nick Fuentes? Does he think that Nick has views that should be heard by the younger generation? Is Tucker anti-Israel, or was the timing of the interview simply a coincidence? Only Tucker can answer those questions, but I will come to his defense in this with an example. Some have said that his speech at Charlie's memorial was evidence of his hate for Israel because he talked about the Jews killing Jesus. But what they missed, beyond the fact that they had to fill in some blanks to get to that assumption, was that during that speech, Tucker was pointing out that just as Jesus' light was not diminished when he was killed, neither is Charlie Kirk's light diminished, but in fact, it is made brighter and will burn longer. Another example that I thought about is this. Who is a good opposite of Nick Fuentes? As I thought about it, I landed on Andrew Torba is a good example of the opposite in many ways of Nick Fuentes. Andrew is stable, he's a Christian, strong, knows the Bible, loves Jesus, has built a great company called Gab, and he has a beautiful family. Nick Fuentes has none of these as far as I can tell. So one must ask, has Tucker ever platformed Andrew Torba? I didn't recall this before coming up with this example, but it turns out that Tucker has platformed Andrew Torba on his show back in 2017. I'm just one guy and one voice, but these are the facts about this situation, and I'm openly encouraging those that see it differently to present their facts as well. I'll continue to avoid Ben Shapiro. I'll continue to listen to Mark Levin, but probably less and more critically. I think I have heroed him maybe a bit too much. I'll continue to listen to Tucker Carlson, not because he is perfect, but because I believe he is truly working for the truth and for the good, and I believe he is caught up in an international fight here that is not of his making. If you think this information is helpful, then certainly like, subscribe, and follow. I've been shadow banned on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube for years, so the shares and likes are helpful. I'm not complaining for sure, but because of the shadow banning, I probably have the least followers and overall voice of anyone that is endorsed by President Trump. I was in DC on January 6th. I started speaking out questioning the COVID narrative in March of 2020. I made a video that went viral in front of the DC jail, and I've been trolled by haters who have falsely gang reported some of my content to get me silenced. I'm running for Congress and now not likely to get an invite to Mark Levin's show. So go ahead and make a contribution to my campaign and pick up my new bestseller book, How We Broke America. Many have worked feverishly to destroy the thing that is one of our greatest gifts, liberty, and they have made a lot of headway in recent years. Many are standing up, as I am, to defend the thing that is most cherished by us in this God-given life. And I am thankful for those with the foresight and the fortitude to stand at such a time as this. Thank you.